All right. Hello, everybody. It's David Ryle,
And Hayden Remick here.
uh, both of us with Trellis for tomorrow, and this is our November virtual garden discussion, garden check. So we wanted to spend a few minutes with you all, just kind of talking a little bit about what's going on in the gardens this time of year. And yeah, it's been kind of an amazing fall, if I do say so myself.
It really has. I mean, this weather is pretty unreal. It's pretty much sunny and 70s all day, every day. So I'll take it.
Yeah, I guess. And, we're seeing sort of, one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is sort of extending your season. And we're seeing an extension of the summer into the fall months, almost like we haven't seen since last year, and the year before, and the year before that. It's a kind of the new normal, unfortunately. I mean, it's gorgeous, but I think we are expecting quite a bit of rain starting tomorrow, which is going to be a nice change in the temperature drop. But it certainly has been very beautiful and unseasonably warm.
Yeah, and this sort of unseasonably warm weather I feel like a lot of people have been asking me the same question lately, which is, when do I shut down my garden? How do I decide to stop this craziness? Because it's been a long few months. We've all been at it since the spring, and it's a lot of hard work.
It is a very funny question, and we do tend to get that question a lot this time of year. I think some of that is informed a little bit because we see crops basically continuing seemingly indefinitely. But I do think that some of it is, is people's just kind of like being a little bit over it and asking. But we get that question a lot around this time of year, and I think the answer is kind of like, I don't know. What would you say, Hayden?
It depends. As is the answer with many gardening questions. It depends.
That's right.
It depends on your personal bandwidth in a lot of ways, and how much help you have in the garden, how you're feeling. If you're really run down and worn out, please clean up your garden, get it put to rest so that you can rest. If you feel energized by the weather and you want to keep growing, there are potentials to grow food for another month, 2 months, maybe into the winter season. So
I would second that. I would just say I couldn't agree more. It really does depend, and I think that I second everything that Hayden said, and I would only add that Elliot Coleman has done some incredible work very, very far north of here to demonstrate sort of the potential of four-season gardening and four-season farming. We live in an area where there's a lot of potential to grow basically year-round, but it really has to do with your energy level. With a lot of our Food for All partners, we do some pretty intensive gardening, and this has been a very intense year to do intensive gardening. So if you're hitting the wall, then we would rather see you take it easy and catch your breath and come back in the spring ready for more than push yourself into December and hate us.
Exactly.
And never garden again. So if you're there, please, by all means. The latter part of our conversation today is going to be focused on shutting your garden down, but we did want to spend a couple minutes talking about what can be kind of grown at this time of year, and what you can do to extend your season as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share my screen here. Can you see that?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Cool. So this is one of, it's become sort of an all-star of this year for us. The cabbages seem to just be doing great. I don't know what it is. But it's a sight for sore eyes after a lot of struggles this summer. So we've gotten, I think it'll probably end up being 500 to 600 pounds of cabbage out of Saint-Gobain's garden just towards the end of the year, which is It is incredible. And we know that people have been receiving these cabbages and just loving them and asking for more, and where are they coming from. So it's really great to see.
That's a huge plus. I mean, if you can grow them, and if you can protect them from some of the things that also like them, it's a relatively low maintenance crop that produces a very big yields. And I can affirm what Hayden is saying, that the people that we're getting these cabbages to are actually requesting them now and really looking for them. So this is a beautiful example of something that's been really, really effective this year.
Yeah. So you mentioned that Elliot Coleman had some plans for four-season gardens. And a lot of what Trellis is focused on is really a 3-season system. So we do early spring, summer, and then a fall planting. So a lot of our gardens are set up to start going to bed right about now, for the most part. But if you have some plants that are established in your garden, these are plants that can usually live through the winter, or at least provide you with a late winter, early spring harvest if you overwinter them.
Yeah, if I can just jump in here,
please.
I would just say that, because of this wacky fall that we've been experiencing, we're actually seeing there are still some peppers and tomatoes and eggplants still standing in the garden, which is incredible if you think about, we're almost to Thanksgiving, and those are technically warm weather, hot weather crops. Those are summer crops that don't like cold weather, and if they get hit with any kind of frost at all, they usually die back. But some of us still haven't seen a frost or even really cold nights at all. So even though you may still have some of those in your garden, those are not examples of crops that will go into the late fall and early winter months. But the cabbage is a great example of one that would.
Cabbages. Here's a beautiful image of some Swiss chard from our Eagle View garden.
Yeah.
This was a fall planting, I believe, and it should be pumping out Swiss chard, till it really gets too cold for it, which would be average temps in the low 30s to 20s, and we're not going to see that for at least a month or two. So we can eke out some more harvests of our Swiss chard. I wanted to talk a little bit about certain methods for extending our season on plants that we have in our gardens as well. So this is an image of lettuce and spinach, but it's contained within what's called a cold frame. And cold frames are basically a system where you build a miniature greenhouse, and it will extend your season. Potentially you can grow through the winter in these and have a beautiful sort of green salad waiting for you in the depths of the darkest months of the year. Yeah, they're very, very good little technology here. We don't have too many of these. Oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, if you have a basic frame for your beds, there are several different models that I've seen people make, which is PVC, and this is a great example of plexiglass or glass, just to trap some of that heat from the day, and it kind of creates a greenhouse effect that significantly lengthens the growing season.
Yeah. And it sort of acts in a similar way to our row cover, which we know we use in most of our gardens. So this is an image of some row cover. And really, a lot of the plants that we row cover to start off, they get uncovered. But if you're looking around at your greens right now and you wanted to get a few more weeks or a month out of them, you could cover that back up with row cover, and it would definitely change the dynamic by at least a couple degrees. And it could make a significant difference in the harvest time frame.
So crops that really fit the bill for kind of growing into the winter months are all of your brassicas. That would be kale, cabbage, collards, broccoli, cauliflower, although broccoli and cauliflower, because of these warm months we've been seeing year over year, tend to not do very well in the fall as it stays so warm. They really need the cool weather to form their crowns. But the kale and collards and
turnips and radishes. Yep. And I would say the warm weather has actually been not only making the brassicas unhappy due to the temperature itself, but it's been extending the life cycles of our pests that we see so much of in our gardens at this time of year, because as plants get older, their immune systems get a little bit weaker. So they're really sort of maturing to the point where they become more susceptible to pests. At the same time, the pests are able to survive for longer because there is no frost. There is no harsh weather to stop them. So they're it's like a perfect storm of older plants and perfect weather for pests. So we really wanted to encourage you to go out in your gardens and observe. Take a look at the undersides of your leaves on your leafy greens. Try to notice any weird patterning or coloration in your leaves that would indicate some pests. We know there's cabbage loopers, harlequin bugs. This is a picture of white flies. There's lots of aphids around. And this is a good indicator that, I probably personally, if this was my garden, I would not cover up a kale leaf that looked like this. I would just pull it out, cut my losses, put the garden to bed for the winter, because it's hard to bring them back from this point.
This is an important piece too, like of the it depends answer. Some of when to put your garden to bed is it depends on your bandwidth. Some of it has to do with the seasonality of the produce that you're growing. It may not be an appropriate time to grow certain things. But then the third, it depends, is just the health of your plants. They might be suffering from pests like you can see here, or disease, and that's really where you want to get up close and personal with your plants and really check on how they're doing. If they're happy and you're happy, then there's really no reason that you can't keep growing if it's the right time of year for those crops. But if even if you have the bandwidth and the energy, but they're sick and suffering, then it might be time to pull the plug and give it a rest.
Yeah, exactly. And another question we get a lot is this something that I should put in the compost pile or not? Now, we don't really have the time to go into the very intricate science and depths of composting in this presentation, but we are going to upload one soon that'll be much more in depth about the many ways you can compost in a garden, from low maintenance to high maintenance to everywhere in between, and we'll sort that out in a separate presentation.
Is there a short answer that we can get? I have something in mind. Like, I've got a short answer in mind, but I want to.
Please, I want to hear it. My short answer is
sure.
If it's covered in pests or it looks like it has a serious disease, I would not compost it, because a lot of our composting systems are what's called cold compost. So we kind of pile up plant material over time. It's not labor intensive, but it also means it doesn't reach the heats within the compost pile to kill off those pests or kill off those diseases. So what's your short answer?
No, that's great. I think you pretty much hit it out of the park. Those are the key indicators, are really the pests and diseases. And, if there's something off looking in your plants, there is something. I'm going to resist the temptation to get really technical here, but I will say that your leaves will tell you a lot just by their color and spots, things that look out of the ordinary. And a lot of times chew damage will lead me to investigate and find pests that are on the underside of leaves, or discoloration in the leaves that is sort of widespread or localized will lead me to draw certain conclusions about what's going on health-wise in my garden. And anytime there's a disease or a pest issue and I'm dealing with what Hayden described so well, a cold compost situation, my inclination is to just remove that material from the garden altogether and not run the risk of perpetuating it in future seasons.
You're starting to sound like a detective. We need garden detectives here, hunting down all these pests and diseases.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the more you get to know your plants, the more you get to know how to read them and sort of familiarize. They will tell you all sorts of things about what's going on in the soil. They will tell you about their own health and happiness. It is an incredible art paired with the science of gardening. There's an unlimited potential for learning about the world that we live in just by having a garden.
Yep, exactly. And it's all about being in tune with the garden and sensing your plant's needs. And we're here to help you get to that point.
That's right. Hayden and I were talking earlier. We love this stuff so much, and part of our passion is just sharing this knowledge and getting people to really experience the joy that both of us have had the pleasure of entering into in our careers.
Absolutely. I wanted to bring up another quick question that I get a lot is, when you're removing a plant from the garden, do you pull up all the roots or do you cut it off at the base? Is it okay to leave some roots in the ground or leave some stem in the garden? What would you say?
Generally speaking, if I'm not dealing with a diseased plant, I think it's really good to leave the stem material in the ground over winter in place, in addition to covering the soil as well. But we'll get into that. But generally speaking, I think leaving the stems in is a good practice. I
would totally agree. Those stems are full of organic matter and nutrients and water. To have those roots in your soil decaying, it actually really increases the beneficial activity in the soil structure. It feeds microbes, it feeds our worms, and all types of little critters that live around there, and hopefully feeds your plants in the coming seasons.
I'm going to go ahead and tee this up for where you're going with this, Hayden.
Sure.
But I'm just going to say that we talk about this to some extent in the gardens, but I wanted to reiterate it now that your soil is part of your garden. Your soil is a living thing that you have a responsibility for as a gardener to care for. And this time of year is an unbelievable opportunity to really care for the health of your soil and tee yourself up for success in 2021 as we get sort of look to next year. So providing that organic material for the things that are alive in your soil and taking some of the steps that Hayden and I are about to talk about to care for your soil going into the winter months is a huge opportunity to care for your garden. So don't think just because the plants are out that the garden is done. You're actually doing a tremendous service to future crops if you're caring for the health and vitality of your soil by taking some very basic steps about organic material like the stems in the ground.
Absolutely. I mean, the soil on our planet is the fundamental building block of all life. So if we don't care for it, we're not caring for ourselves when we're not caring for our plants. And it's actually so easy to care for the soil. It's a very simple system. And really, the goal is to just add organic material and to keep your soil covered with some layer of material at all times. When you leave your soil exposed to the elements, it can blow away. The rain will wash some of those nutrients out, and the sun is actually acting as a UV sanitization device. So a teaspoon of soil, I believe it's filled with billions of living organisms.
That's right.
And if you leave that surface of your soil exposed to the sun basically makes it impossible for any life to live. If we stood out in the sun for a long enough time, we'd probably be toast too. Same with the microorganisms that feed our soil and feed our plants. Which is why I would tell anyone who ever wants to garden, it's very important to add organic material back to that soil. This is a picture of some compost right here. And normally, as sort of a final step of putting your garden to rest, I would suggest you put at least a 1 to 2 inch layer of compost on top of your beds. You could do this when you clean out the beds. You could do it around plants that you wanted to keep alive. Like that picture of Swiss chard earlier, we had heavily mulched with compost around the Swiss chard to extend its life and to feed that soil over the winter.
And Hayden, what do you look for in compost? Are you talking about mulch from like a garden center? Do you just get that black or red mulch? Or
that's a fantastic question. I used the word mulch, and so many times I say mulch and people see wood chips or that dyed stuff from the Home Depot Center. Mulching is really a practice, and it's more of the practice of covering your soil. Any material you use can be a mulch. It could be cardboard, it could be rocks in certain climates, it can be dried leaves, which are plentiful this time of year and easy to gather. And we prefer compost because it's very rich in organic material. There are many different types of composts. The one that I think we've been getting lately is called leaf compost. So it's basically huge piles of leaves that they turn and they break down into the fundamental basis for soil, which is these organic components and nutrients and minerals. And
in many cases, you can go to home supply centers like Home Depot and Lowe's, and you can get leaf mulch. You can get compost. They sell it by the bag, but many townships gather leaves throughout the township, and people donate them and bring them in, and they turn these piles. They're hot compost piles, and oftentimes they will make leaf mulch or leaf mold, both basically the same thing, available for homeowners to come and pick up certain amounts. So if you're looking for a limited amount for your home garden, you can absolutely check with your township to see if they have leaf mulch or leaf mold available for homeowners.
That is a great resource. Yeah. As long as you have a way to haul it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Open that trunk up.
So, there's lots of ways you can mulch your soil. I recently got a question about pine needles. And pine needles will act as a mulch if you use them in a thick enough layer. But in general, we would advise you not to use pine needles year after year because they can actually change the pH of your soil. pH, basically, it means whether your soil is an acid or a base. So plants need a very specific window of pH, usually between about 6.5 and 7 or so, a little bit of variability in order to uptake nutrients, right? So if we bring that soil pH even a little bit out, the plants won't be able to take up the nutrients even if they do exist in the soil.
And it can alter the microorganisms that live, like they rely on pH.
Yeah, didn't mean to get too nerdy there, but
you walked out big
fascinating
time.
To me.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, so that's
some nice pictures of leaves, which are like widely available. People like scrape these off of their lawns and put them out for the landfill.
Exactly.
And it's a crazy thing. But most townships will pick this stuff up and add this to their leaf mulch. But you can, if you've got your neighbor's consent, It's not too risky. You can gather this stuff up and you can actually just put your garden to bed with some leaves. So you can be on the lookout for this stuff if you don't want to go find some leaf mulch material.
It'll save you work and time and energy, even just to put them on your garden beds instead of putting them in these bags and shipping them all over town.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, leaves are alone so amazing. Yeah, and plentiful.
Well, I'll tell you, this has been really, really great. We are just past the 20-minute mark, and we don't want to take up too much more of your time, but we will tell you that we're in the final stages of preparing a report for the 2020 season, which has actually been remarkably impactful and successful, and we're really looking forward to sharing those details with you, including our poundage totals for the year, as well as some other information. So you're going to be hearing from us in the coming weeks, including in the coming days. If you have any questions or comments or things that you'd like to hear us talk on, please don't hesitate to reach out. But we are preparing a number of other presentations on these and other topics that I think will be of some use to you. So don't go anywhere. You're going to be hearing from us.
All right. Thank you, David. It's always a pleasure talking to you about this stuff.
Absolutely, Hayden. This is I could talk about this stuff all day long, and you and I might be the only ones listening in on this conversation.
Everyone's already zoned out, but that's okay. It's useful info.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, happy gardening, everybody. If you've made it to this point, we are so proud of you for so many reasons. I'm talking about the season, but it could also apply to this call, this presentation. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. We really love you guys, and we look forward to every interaction that we have with you, and stay tuned for more. We'll see you soon.
All right. Take care, everyone.